The first time Miriam Zhao saw a door that shouldn't exist, it was painted the exact color of old hospital sheets. Not white. White was hopeful in a stupid fluorescent way. This was the washed-out gray you got after chlorine and years. The color of fabric that had been asked to witness more than it was designed for. The door stood where nothing had stood yesterday, against a concrete support pillar under the third ring overpass, between a mural of dancing antennas and a stall that sold grilled corn and battery packs. No hinges, no frame. Just a rectangle of that tired gray with a handle made of brushed steel that had no right to look that clean in this city. People streamed past without seeing it. Miriam stood in the heat-smudged air, emergency vest thrown on over yesterday's shirt, fingers still raw from the last call-out, and stared. Her field bracelet pulsed. Unlicensed threshold detected. Level, anomalous. Array authorization required. Warden, present Miriam Zhao. She pressed 2 fingers to the bracelet. Array, this is Warden Zhao, she said, keeping her voice steady. Confirm visual. I have an untagged door on Lagos Orbital District 3, Underpass Sector 12. No anchor sigils, no interference field. Locals aren't noticing it at all. The response came with the slightly too even tone of a translator field smoothing out a dozen accents at once. Confirmed, Warden Zhao. Anomaly logged. Hold position, supervising architect en route. Miriam let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding and rubbed at her eyes. Her last shift had ended 2 hours ago. She'd spent one of those hours on a tram that broke down twice. The other had been occupied with getting coffee and apparently finding impossible geometry under a bridge. She walked a slow circle around the door. From some angles it was obvious, from others it fuzzed out, as if the world's texture engine had misloaded. The concrete pillar's graffiti bled right up against the edges and then simply stopped. A child ran past, chasing a pressure ball that squeaked like it was being murdered. The ball bounced off the pillar, skittered dangerously close to the door, then ricocheted away. No shimmer, no distortion, no ominous hum. Okay, Miriam muttered to it under her breath. Either you're the neatest trick I've ever seen, or I finally fell asleep on the tram and died. The door, to its credit, did not answer. The Registry of Thresholds was officially the smallest institution in human space. Unofficially, it was the only thing standing between 814 known intelligent species and mutually assured spatial nonsense. The universe, as it turned out, did not particularly enjoy being poked full of holes. Every time someone invented a gate, a fold engine, a wormhole modulator, or just a little shortcut between realities, I checked the math twice. The underlying fabric of causality threw a quiet tantrum. One tantrum was, fine, 10, and you got ghost moons and ships that arrived before they left. 100, and physics started sending passive-aggressive error messages. After the War of Exits, 58 years of unregulated gateway use that left half a cluster crystallized and another half falling upward. The older species had decided someone needed to keep a list, that someone had become the Registry. They counted, they inspected, they licensed holes in reality the way harbor masters licensed docks, and they shut down anything that looked like it wanted to be a throat. For the first 50 years, humans had not been allowed within 100 light-years of its administrative hub. Then somebody dug up archive footage of the Magnetar crisis and the Avenai veils over Earth, and the calculus changed. A species that had once begged for a shield big enough to wrap a world, then bled to ferry someone else's, had a way of moving the room. Humanity got a probationary seat on the bottom tier with a folding chair and a note that said, "Observer status only." Miriam wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that room. She'd been a city responder, not a diplomat. She knew how to find trapped people in collapsed tenements, how to talk someone down from a high ledge, how to coax an overloaded battery swarm into shutting down without turning 3 blocks into a crater. She'd been good at it. Too good, apparently. Someone in the Lagos liaison office had flagged her incident reports to the Registry. Someone else had noticed how often the phrase "no fatalities" appeared next to situations that should have left a body count. There had been an interview, an aptitude screening, a test that had felt half like a psych eval and half like a trick question disguised as an ethics exam. 30 weeks later, she'd become the planetary threshold warden for Sol 3. It meant a better pension, worse sleep, and a bracelet that never stopped whispering. The supervising architect arrived as a shimmer in the air that resolved into a person-shaped absence. The absence blended the way good glass does. You saw the city through it, slightly bent but still itself. Only when the figure moved did your eyes complain. Light took a fraction of a second too long to catch up. "Miriam Zhao," the figure said, voice like paper sliding across wood. "You keep finding things on your days off." "Some people collect stamps," she replied automatically. "Architect Kelleth, you're very fast." "I was already in orbit," Kelleth said. "Our instruments noticed when your bracelet started screaming. May I?" They stepped closer to the door. As they did, the transparency of their body pulsed with faint sigils, geometric glyphs that all species recognized as the Registry's marker. Neutral, stubborn, extremely hard to lie to. Kelleth extended a hand without touching the surface. Around their fingers, space trembled in tiny, petulant ripples. "Well," they said after a moment, "that's not supposed to exist." "That's what I told it," Miriam said. "It's not listening." "Some thresholds form spontaneously," Kelleth murmured, ignoring her. "When stars die, when civilizations collapse, when someone pushes their local physics through a resonance, those carry signatures. This—" They broke off, frowning the delicate, precise frown of someone whose job consisted of making sure the universe stayed alphabetized. "There is no external anchor," they said. "No device, no lattice, no trace of prior gatework. The seam density is too neat to be a tear, and the barrier is reactive." "Reactive how?" Miriam asked. "Like a choice," Kelleth said quietly. "Try touching it." Her stomach did a small, offended flip. "Excuse me?" "You're the warden," Kelleth replied. "This is your world. The Registry's charter prohibits external personnel from interacting physically with an unlicensed local anomaly before the local warden does." "Convenient little rule," Miriam muttered. "Who wrote that?" "Your species," Kelleth said. "You insisted on it." Of course they had. Miriam blew out a breath, flexed her fingers, and stepped up to the door. From this close, the gray of it wasn't smooth, it was textured like cloth. A million tiny fibers woven so tightly you couldn't push a needle through. She lifted her hand until her palm hovered a centimeter away. "Hey," she said under her breath, feeling vaguely foolish. "If you're the sort of thing that eats hands and spits out people shaped wrong, please reconsider. I have work on Monday." Then she pressed her palm to the surface. It was cool, not cold. Cold was empty. This was the cool of ceramic in a shaded courtyard, the cool of a sleeping child's forehead when you were terrified of finding heat. Her bracelet flared. The world went very quiet. Local authorization requested. Proposed designation, holding place. Origin, human collective field. Permit? Miriam jerked. "Kelleth, did you see?" "I see nothing," the architect said. "Your bracelet lit, then went blind. You're inside the negotiation." Her palm was still on the door. She tried to pull it away. It didn't move. Not stuck. There was no suction, no glue, no physical resistance, but something in her wrist refused the command. She swallowed. "Holding place," she said aloud. "That's your name?" The answer wasn't words. It was memory. A surge of images flickered behind her eyes, too fast to focus but heavy. A waiting room with plastic chairs and a TV that never worked. A metro tunnel where people huddled in the dark while the city above shook. A WhatsApp thread with the little typing indicator blinking and blinking and blinking. People waiting for news. Miriam whispered. You're holding place. A location to wait while outcomes collapse. The definition pressed gently into her thoughts as if asking permission to exist. There. This isn't an external threshold, she said slowly. It's homegrown. Kelleth's absence body flickered, a gesture equivalent to a raised eyebrow. Clarify. Humans made this, Miriam said, not with tech, with us, with all the times we said. She stopped, throat tightening because she had said it too many times in ruined stairwells and smoky corridors. Stay here. I'll be right back. There it was again. The wash of waiting rooms, of half-spoken prayers, of hands gripping hands. You told us you would return, the not voice of the door implied, gentle and inexorable. We believed you. We built somewhere for the believing to go. The Registry's hub station hung in a kink of space-time like a knot in a rope. It had no front. From one angle it looked like a cluster of mirrored petals. From another a spiraled lattice of corridors. From a third a single long bridge strung with lights. Miriam saw it as nothing at all. That was the natural advantage of being human in a place designed by species for whom 4 dimensions were a polite suggestion. The human eye had learned long ago to ignore too much information. To Miriam, the hub was just a series of rooms that never quite lined up with how elevators were supposed to work. She was ushered, not walked, not floated, but subtly nudged, into a chamber whose walls were covered in slowly rotating glyphs. The air was cool. The floor was not really there. She stood anyway. Around the central well, representatives of 5 species glowed, leaned, or hovered. No one called them a council because that word carried too much history. In the founding documents, they were simply listed as the coordination tier. They all turned toward her when she appeared. Miriam Zhao, said Kelleth, already at their place, now wearing a shape closer to her own. Solid, humanoid, but with too many fingers. Planetary Warden for Sol 3, reporting a level red anomaly. I didn't call it red, Miriam muttered. Her words dropped into the well where something slowly drinking the meeting transcribed them. Origin Sol 3, said a low thrumming voice to Kelleth's left. The speaker was a hulking being whose surface shimmered like volcanic glass, trying to remember it had once been molten. Is this another improvised gate? We have documented 32 in the last decade. Miriam recognized them from briefings. Name in the files. Rhav, species, Serikan, function, enforcement oversight, translation, the one who shut things down. It's not a gate, Miriam said. It doesn't go across, it goes aside. Clarify, Rhav rumbled. She swallowed. We found an unlicensed threshold under a highway, no device, no external anchor. My field bracelet identified it as a holding place. It says its origin is human collective field. That made the air change. Species that didn't use visible faces still managed to radiate disbelief. A cluster of floating silver. Threads to her right, envoy designate from the serene continuum, pulsed an anxious blue. Thresholds require engineered asymmetry, they said. Devices, rituals, sacrifices, they do not spontaneously crystallize from population thought. Usually, Kelleth agreed, but humans have a track record with unusual emergent phenomena. They gestured, and a holographic projection of the door unfolded in the air. Gray, unassuming, perfectly wrong. Sigils blossomed around it, measurements Miriam couldn't read, like the outputs of instruments she hadn't been taught how to operate. Current analysis indicates a local pocket adjacent to standard 4 space, Keleth said. Self-bounded, time-dilated. It appears to be designed to hold human state information temporarily at non-lethal thresholds. Lay terms, Rhav grunted. Keleth sighed with the kind of patience that had been practiced to weapon grade. It is a waiting room. There are waiting rooms on every transit station in the galaxy, Rhav pointed out. We do not classify them as dangerous holes in reality. Those are chairs, Keleth said. This is metaphysical furniture. Miriam pinched the bridge of her nose and counted to 3. Look, she said. I think you're missing the point. My bracelet asked me if I wanted to permit it. That means it's still forming. If we don't understand what it's for, we can't know what happens if we say no. Or if we say yes, the Continuum envoy said softly. Human artifacts have a way of expanding, added a new voice, high-pitched, full of nervous amusement. A small, multi-eyed creature in a metallic harness, representative of the atoll clans, rotated in place. You turn a rock into a wheel, into a transport, into a gun. Perhaps don't turn your waiting rooms into whatever this is. That gun saved half your convoy during the tidal folds, Miriam shot back, then clamped her jaw. Being snippy in front of the coordination tier was probably a bad habit. Rhav leaned forward. What is the risk, Architect? Any unlicensed threshold carries destabilization probability, Keleth said. This one is anchored in human collective cognition, which is, no offense, chaotic. If it undercuts the Registry's lattice, it could spawn echoes, unregulated pockets, self-similar, spreading wherever sufficient emotional density exists. Under current doctrine, that qualifies as an existential pattern risk. Collapse procedure? Rhav asked. Immediate nullification, Keleth said quietly. Seal coordinate, erase structure, bleach anchor imprint. As this anomaly is under human jurisdiction, the act would be delegated to their warden. The air in the chamber went very still. Miriam felt something cold and ugly work its way down her spine. You want me to destroy it? We require you to fulfill your mandate, Rhav replied. If you refuse, the Registry's charter obligates us to quarantine Sol 3 from all threshold access. No more gates, no more trade, no more assistance. Exile, in nicer words. You want me, Miriam said, trying to keep her voice steady, to erase the first thing my species has made that can hold our fear somewhere safe. We do not yet know that it is safe, the Continuum envoy said gently. Keleth watched her with eyes that weren't, strictly speaking, there. The Registry is not unfeeling, Warden Zhao, but we exist to keep known universes stitched together. We cannot allow uncontrolled thresholds, no matter how poetic their origins. May I speak plainly? Miriam asked. Rhav snorted. You already are. More plainly, then. She took a breath. You all built this Registry because you were tired of realities breaking whenever somebody sneezed near a prototype. You did it after the War of Exits, after the chorus collapsed the language nets, after the veils over Earth. You nailed the doors down because you were terrified. I get that. We're very proud to have been part of your trauma. No one interrupted. But you also know, she continued, quieter now, that systems that refuse to adapt eventually crack. We didn't mean to make the holding place, but we did. You can throw doctrine at it, call it a level red and sweep it away. Or you can recognize that your precious fabric of reality now includes this wrinkle, and figure out how to sew it in. Rav's obsidian surface rippled, a Sarikan's equivalent of grinding teeth. You argue for exception. I argue for inspection before annihilation, Miriam said. Let me go inside, let me see what's there. If it's dangerous, we'll collapse it together, but I won't break it blind. That is not standard procedure, Rhav said. Nothing about humans is standard procedure, Keleth murmured. The Continuum envoy pulsed a soft, uncertain violet. There is precedent for a provisional classification. We did not erase the first dream cities of the Lannar once we understood their boundaries. That took 2 centuries, Rhav snapped. We have 6 days, Miriam said. They all turned. 6 days? Keleth repeated. She nodded stiffly. Before you whisked me off to your not-a-council room, she said, ignoring the faint flinch, I pinged local monitors. The holding place is attracting something. People who are in between, they're seeping. If we do nothing, it will choose its own function. If we slam it, we might be closing a door in someone's face when they're halfway through. Keleth's gaze narrowed. How many? 3 confirmed, Miriam said. 17 probable. 1 mid-emergency. She didn't let her voice crack on the last one. Emergency dispatch had forwarded the call while she'd been circling the door. A building fire in Sur-Lair, faulty battery stack, 3rd floor partial collapse, 1 missing child last seen in a stairwell. The call log had ended with, we've got everyone else, but we can't find, then static. Her bracelet had vibrated at the same moment, the holding place pulsing in her mind like a heartbeat. It was entirely possible she was imagining connections. That was the problem with humans. They liked patterns, faces in clouds, gods in weather, meaning in coincidence. But she had been a responder too long to ignore timing. Please, she said, the word tasting like rust. Give me a window. I'll go in, document everything, and come back out before your stabilization models have a chance to panic. If it looks like a threat, I'll help you pull the plug. If it doesn't, we you revise your doctrine. Either way, you'll have data. The tier was silent. Finally, the Continuum envoy pulsed green. I support provisional entry, they said. With tether. Opposed, Rhav grunted. All eyes went to Keleth. Architects weren't supposed to decide. They observed, measured, recommended. But this wasn't a vote you solved by committee. Waiting would be a decision too. Keleth looked at Miriam a long time. Your species, they said at last, is constitutionally incapable of resisting strange doors. Accurate, she admitted. If you die inside, Rhav said, we seal the coordinate and quarantine your world. You understand this. I do, Miriam said. If you bring anything back that destabilizes the lattice, the Continuum envoy added, we will collapse your anomaly and erase its pattern completely, even from memory. Miriam's throat tightened. You can do that? Once, Keleth said softly. At great cost. We prefer not to. The architect raised a hand. The glyphs on the walls slowed. Provisional entry authorized, they said. With tether. Warden Zhao, you will be accompanied by an external auditor. Who? She asked. Keleth's shape shivered, shrinking, reassembling. When it stabilized, a second figure stood beside them, a taller, less translucent version of the absence body with edges that cut the air. This is Keelan of the Outer Span, Keleth said. They answer to no species. Their mandate is singular. To observe what happens when things go wrong. Keelan inclined their head. Their eyes were old in a way Miriam had only seen in fault lines and coastal maps. I'm not expecting a lot of support from you, am I? She said. My duty, Keelan said calmly, is to be difficult to convince. Perfect. Fine, Miriam said. Meet me under a highway. The 3rd ring overpass smelled like hot rubber and starch. Traffic roared overhead in a constant tired thunder. Vendors stayed in the shade, half ignoring the registry van parked at the curb. No sirens, no flashing lights. The registry didn't like scenes. That was how you got rumors, footage, more strange thresholds. Miriam pulled a respirator up over her nose on reflex and stepped out. Lagos, Air these days was better than the stories had promised, but it still carried traces of all the ways humans had been busy. The door was still there, the exact color of hospital linen, the exact size of an apology. Keelan stood beside it, looking wrong in a way that only spaceborne beings did when gravity was something they tolerated rather than believed in. Their long coat had no seams. Their boots were clean. People's eyes slid off them without noticing they existed. "You're late," they said mildly. "I negotiated for an extra 30 minutes, Miriam said, to notify my second." "You have a second?" Keelan sounded faintly surprised. "What, you thought I was a one-woman bureaucracy?" Miriam asked. "I have backups. Habiba's taking point while I'm wherever this is." "If you don't return," Keelan said, "she will be tasked with logging the failure and closing the file." "That's her least favorite part of the job," Miriam said quietly. "So I'll try to come back." She pulled a coil of shimmering thread from the equipment case in the van. It glowed faintly blue like the idea of a river. "Is that a sentimental choice?" Keelan asked. "It's a tether," Miriam said. "Quantum link to the registry hub. You're holding the other end. If this thing tries to fold us, you yank." "The registry has other tethers," they said. "They're not rated for what this is," Miriam replied. "This one is named after the first time we held a door open for someone." Keelan tilted their head. "You're sentimental." "You're repeating yourself," Miriam said. "Let's go." She clipped one end of the tether to the bracelet on her wrist. Keelan took the other in their gloved hand. From an onlooker's perspective, nothing had changed. Two people stood in the shadow of a highway, staring at a wall where there was nothing. Miriam stepped up to the gray. "Last chance to advise against this," she said. "My last chance was at the hub," Keelan said. "Now we're committed." Comforting. She placed her palm against the surface again. Cool. Waiting. Local authorization requested. Origin human collective field. Function holding place permit. Miriam inhaled. "I permit," she whispered. For a fraction of a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world folded around her like someone closing a curtain made of everything. For an instant, she heard all the waiting rooms at once. Voices. "Have you heard anything yet?" They said 2 hours. "No news is good news. Just stay right here, okay? I'll come back, I promise." The cool behind her hand became depth. The tether went taut. Keelan stepped up beside her and with the detached poise of someone who had spent most of their life walking into catastrophes followed. The holding place opened. She smelled antiseptic. Not the sharp chemical bite of a real emergency ward. This was softer, the echo of it like a memory of alcohol wipes and the dry rustle of paper gowns. Miriam blinked. She was standing in a corridor that belonged to no hospital she had ever worked in. The walls were the pale green of outdated design. Plastic chairs lined one side, each one occupied by people. They looked normal. A middle-aged man in a work shirt, knee bouncing, fingers shredding the edges of a paper cup. A teenager hugging a backpack, earbuds in, music leaking faintly. A woman in a janitor's jumpsuit, eyes fixed on a door sign that read, "Procedure in progress." An old auntie with her head wrapped, murmuring a prayer into the silver bead of a tasbih. They all shared the same expression. The shell-shocked stillness of people whose lives had been boiled down to the interval between question and answer. No one looked surprised to see Miriam. Their eyes slid over her the way commuters look at another commuter. A brief acknowledgement that said, "We are all trapped on this train together. Let's not make it weird." Keelan stood at her shoulder, gaze cool, body angled like they were taking a measurement. "Field integrity?" they murmured. Miriam checked her bracelet. The display was a slow, steady pulse. No alarms. "Stable," she whispered back. "No sign of anything." Just people. She stepped closer to the old woman with the tasbih. "Ma'am," she said gently, "do you know where you are?" The woman glanced at her, eyes clouded but sharp. "In the corridor," she said. Her accent put her from somewhere north, maybe Kano. "My son is in surgery." Her fingers tightened on the beads. "The doctor said to wait here." "How long have you been waiting?" Miriam asked. The woman frowned. "Since they took him through." "Do you remember before that?" "For what?" the woman asked impatiently. "He was bleeding. They put him on the table. They told me to wait." Something in her tone made Miriam's chest ache. She had heard that same rhythm in 100 voices, the way people clung to the one instruction that still made their world feel less than entirely random. "She's anchored to a moment," Keelan said softly. "Time slice. The continuum reads her as existing in a single unresolved interval." "It's doing what it said," Miriam murmured. "Holding." She turned. At the far end of the corridor, a door marked "Exit" glowed faintly. Another door, identical to the one under the highway, stood in the side wall, painted that same tired gray. Above it, in simple, unambiguous letters, someone had written, "When you know, you go." Miriam's throat closed. Her bracelet buzzed. Warden Zhao. Presence of unresolved human states confirmed. Local structure stable, policy conflict. Registry doctrine requires collapse. Holding place function preserves human commitments. Away Team 2. Observer status. Keelan of outer span. Action. Keelan looked at her. "Now you see the problem," they said quietly. "If we destroy this, we unmake these intervals. Their world lines will snap back. Some will live, some will die. None will know they were here. The registry stays clean." "And if we let it stay?" Miriam asked. "Then we admit a precedent," Keelan said. "We admit that when humans make a promise, the universe itself sometimes rearranges to hold it." They held out a small device, a sphere dark as old obsidian etched with faint sigils. "Rhav sent this," Keelan said. "One pulse triggers a collapse cascade. You press, the structure falls. It will feel like it never existed." Miriam stared at the sphere. Behind her, somewhere down the corridor, a child laughed once, high, startled, hopeful, and then fell silent. "Not much of a choice," she said hoarsely. "Most important choices aren't," Keelan replied. "You asked for inspection. Consider this your report. The holding place is exactly what it claims to be. No obvious malicious vectors. No active manipulation, just waiting. But waiting breeds attachments. Attachments breed complexity. Complexity breeds risk." They closed her fingers around the sphere. "Your mandate is to protect your world," they said, "not your sentiment. Choose." Miriam swallowed. Nobody in the corridor seemed aware of them, and yet the air felt like a tension. Like every chair, every scuffed floor tile, every human breath was listening. Under her skin, the tether to the registry hummed. Above her head, invisible for now, doctrine waited like a storm held in a dam. She looked at the exit sign. She looked at the gray door with, "When you know, you go." She thought of all the times she'd told someone, "Stay here, I'll be back." Of the one time she hadn't been, when the stairwell had come down faster than her legs could carry her. The boy in the orange shirt, the text thread that ended mid-emoji. Her fingers tightened on the collapse trigger. "Architect Kelleth said the registry exists to keep known universes stitched together," she whispered. "Maybe we've been using the wrong thread." Keelan's eyes narrowed. "What are you going to do, Warden Zhao?" Miriam took a breath that tasted like antiseptic and coffee and all the unanswered calls in the world. And then, with her other hand, she reached for the gray door marked, "When you know, you go," and pulled it open. Miriam had opened 1,000 doors in her life, fire doors swollen from heat, Apartment doors kicked in on domestic calls. Rusted rooftop latches with paint worn shiny by desperate hands. Doors that hid people who wanted to be saved and people who didn't. None of them had ever felt like this. The gray surface moved around her fingers, not like a solid yielding, but like cloth-making room. A depthless cool washed over her skin and then her wrist, crawling up her arm in a slow, electric numbness. Her bracelet buzzed once sharply as though offended. Light shifted, not brighter, not darker, just sideways. The antiseptic corridor behind her faded into a reflection on glass. The chairs, the people, the exit sign, all turned ghost-pale and distant like something seen through rain. Before her, where the door should have been, was a room that didn't understand the word room. It had walls and a floor and a ceiling because Miriam's brain needed those. But the walls were made of lines more than matter. Threads of light, some taut, some tangled, some frayed. They stretched away into a haze she couldn't focus on. Each thread pulsed faintly, and every pulse felt like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. Keelan stepped up beside her, tether still looped through their hand. To Miriam's eyes, they looked almost normal here. Whatever this place was, it liked clean edges. "This is not in the initial survey," Keelan said quietly. "Survey didn't open the door," Miriam replied. Her voice sounded wrong in here, not echoing, quite the opposite. Every word fell straight down and vanished like dropped stones into deep water. Her bracelet flickered. Inner layer accessed. Function resolution vectors contents human unresolved states. Warning, observation may alter distributions. Resolution vectors, Keelan murmured, reading over her shoulder. Lovely euphemism. For outcomes, Miriam said. These are paths, probabilities. She stepped closer to the nearest thread. It glowed a faint amber. As she focused on it, the air around her filled with a smell. Fried plantain and engine oil. A fragment of song, laughter turning into a shout, cut off mid-word. For a split second, she saw an image, a mechanic under a cargo hauler, jack slipping, chassis falling. "Stop!" Keelan snapped. Miriam jerked back. The image snapped too, dissolving. The amber thread stopped pulsing so fast. It settled into a slow, steady rhythm again. "Careful," Keelan said. "You almost collapsed that one." "I didn't touch it," Miriam protested. "You looked." Their eyes were dark, intent. "In structures like this, attention is leverage. You of all species should know that. You built a social net that runs on it." She swallowed. They weren't wrong. "Fine," she said. "We don't stare too hard at the threads. We're just touring." "Touring?" Keelan repeated dryly. Miriam turned slowly, taking in the space without focusing on any single line for too long. It felt like standing in the middle of a traffic junction made of maybes. "Do you feel that?" she asked. "The hum?" Keelan said. "Yes." "It's familiar," Miriam said reluctantly. "Like the noise in your head when you're waiting for someone to call." Keelan's mouth twitched. "The holding place appears to be a field integrator," they said. "It gathers unresolved human expectations and arranges them. Not choosing, not yet, just holding them near their tipping points." "That sounds disturbingly close to what the Registry does," Miriam said. "The Registry licenses physical thresholds," Keelan said. "Built with technology or structured ritual. This," they gestured around them, "is not licensed," they finished. Something tugged gently at Miriam's bracelet, not the tether to the hub. That hummed in a clear, long line like a note held steady. This tug was smaller, hesitant, local. She looked down. A new line of light had appeared, attached to the underside of her bracelet. It ran away into the haze, faint but growing brighter, like a wire heating. Her heart climbed into her throat. "That," she whispered, "is your way in deeper. Keelan said. The structure is responding to your authority. It is offering you a vector. The line pulsed again. On the next pulse, Miriam heard sirens. Not here. Not now. In the sound's texture was metal and night and breathless radio chatter. Lagos sirens, local. The Surulaire fire. The missing kid, she said. It's tied to this. Correlation is not causation, Keelan said reflexively. Do you have kids? Miriam snapped. Keelan regarded her for a long beat. No, they said. Then maybe skip the reflex today. She gripped the line. Her fingers met no resistance. The light felt like nothing at all. But the moment she thought about following it, the floor tilted. The line pulled. She went. She was on a stairwell, concrete, cheap metal railing. The air was thick with smoke that wasn't smoke, caught halfway between memory and chemistry. Sound came in chopped fragments like a bad connection. A crackle of fire, the muffled thud of something heavy falling, a siren wail cresting and fading too distant. Miriam coughed on habit. The smoke didn't burn. Apparently her lungs knew this wasn't exactly real. Her instincts hadn't got the memo. Keelan appeared beside her as easily as stepping through a doorway. Their tether shimmered faintly in the half-light, a straight line slicing through the gray. We're inside a vector cluster, they said quietly, synced to an ongoing event. Say the fire like a normal person, Miriam muttered. She recognized the geometry. Standard Lagos mid-rise, 4 stories built before the last wave of code updates. She'd seen the building schematics in dispatch on the way up, stairwell at the center, battery stacks along the east wall, balconies on the west. Hello? She called. Her voice bounced off concrete, came back smaller. No answer. She took the stairs 2 at a time, up. The smoke grew thicker, or at least the idea of it did. Heat pressed at her skin without quite landing. On the 3rd floor landing, she stopped. A door stood open. The air beyond it was a smear of orange and black, like a fire scene painted in watercolors. The details refused to sharpen. The heat here was more insistent, not enough to hurt, just enough to remind her that somewhere right now, the real version was, with real lungs, real bodies. A small shape crouched on the landing back against the opposite wall. A boy, maybe 8, maybe 9, hard to tell, half curled in on himself, t-shirt, shorts patterned with cartoon rockets, one shoe missing. His eyes were huge, tear tracks cut clean lines down his soot-streaked face. He looked up when Miriam stepped onto the landing. Auntie, he whispered. Miriam's gut twisted. The last time she'd heard that particular combination of fear and hope, the ceiling had come down. Hey, she said softly, kneeling to get on his level. Hey, I'm Miriam. I'm a rescuer, an emergency worker. I'm here to help you, okay? The boy blinked. You came, he said. His voice was thick with disbelief. You called? Miriam asked. He nodded. The lady on the phone, he said. She said stay in the stair. Someone will come. You came. Miriam thought of the dispatcher on the call log. A young voice, steady with practice, saying, Stay on the stairs. Help is on the way. Can you tell me your name? What's your name? She asked. Tunji, he said. Tunji, she repeated. Nice to meet you. He managed a tiny, shaky smile. Are we going now? He asked. She opened her mouth to say yes on reflex and stopped, because she had no idea. Was there even a path out of here? Were they moving in the real building or inside an echo frozen at the worst possible moment? If she led him into the painted fire, what happened? Behind her, Keelan said nothing. Their silence felt like a judgment she didn't have time for. Her bracelet vibrated against her wrist. Vector Tunji Adekoya. Status, unresolved. Probability spread, survival, you owe significant injury, 12%. Survival with injury, 39%. Fatality, 49% mediating factors. Structural integrity, response time, Promise load. Promise load, Miriam murmured. You see it too? Keelan asked. Yeah, she said. You don't? I do not have interface privileges, Keelan said. This is tuned to you. Explain. Promise load, she said slowly, thinking aloud, is how many promises are tied to him. I'll be right back. Stay here. We'll get you out. The holding place measures that and uses it to bias outcomes, Keelan said. That would explain the spread. You sound like you've seen this before, Miriam said. I've seen systems that use emotional weight as input, Keelan said. They're usually either religious or very illegal. Relax, Miriam muttered. We didn't build this on purpose. That does not make it less dangerous, Keelan said. Tunji's gaze flicked between them, confused. Auntie? He whispered. Are we going? Miriam looked at him, tiny chest rising too fast, little hands curled into fists around nothing at all. The kind of absolute, unguarded trust you only got from someone who hadn't had it broken yet. She had given that trust something to cling to when she set her palm on the underpass door and said, I permit. Could she take it away now? Collapse the holding place? Let probability snap back? Half of the spread ending in a morgue. The registry's doctrine said yes if that was safer for the lattice. Her own bones said no. We're going, she said. She stood, offered Tunji her hand. He took it immediately, fingers small and hot in her grip. They stepped toward the painted fire. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the world twitched. The hazy orange resolved, not all the way, but enough for Miriam to see shapes. A corridor with ugly linoleum floors, plumes of thick smoke, doorways on either side. The heat surged, a blast from an open oven. Tunji flinched, squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. It's okay, she said. Keep low. Stay with me. Keelan followed, tether cutting a neat line through the smoke like someone had drawn it in after the fact. Their expression had settled into a calm so total it looped back around into tension. Don't breathe it too deep, Miriam told Tunji automatically. Shallow breaths, through your shirt. Yeah, like that. Good. She guided him along the wall, hands skimming surfaces that felt more like ideas of plaster than plaster itself. The holding place was doing an impression of a burning building, but some details kept slipping. A crack on the floor would be there 1 second and gone the next. Flames licked at the ceiling beams without consuming them. The sound of the fire came and went. This is wrong, Keelan said under their breath. The structure is not modeling physics accurately. It's not supposed to, Miriam said. It's modeling fear. Something slammed into the door ahead of them, a bang, then another, a voice, hoarse and angry and familiar, swearing in Yoruba. Miriam, someone shouted, if you're in there with my missing kid, open this door right now. Miriam's heart did a weird, violent thing. She lunged forward and yanked the handle. The door dissolved. On the other side was not more corridor, but a jagged, shimmering oval, like a cutout in reality. Through it, she saw a slice of the actual third-floor landing. Thick, true smoke, flickering light, figures in firefighting gear. One of them was braced against the door frame, shoulders hunched as if pushing on something solid. Habiba, her second's helmet. Visor was up. Soot streaked her face. She stared straight through the oval at Miriam like she could see her. Zhao? She demanded. What did you do? Miriam almost laughed. Long story, she said. You can see me? Barely, Habiba said. Her voice wobbled only a little. It's like static, but the kid's signature is all over this door. Are you with him? Tunji pressed closer to Miriam's leg, peeking around her. I'm here, he whispered. Habiba's eyes widened. Okay, she said carefully. Good. Great. We've got a partial collapse between you and the stairwell. Real world, I mean. We're cutting through, but we're slow. Buildings older than the Registry's sense of humor. This, Miriam gestured at the oval, isn't the real door. No kidding, Habiba said. It showed up when he stopped shouting. Miriam's bracelet buzzed, overlaying Habiba's words. Vector link established. Real space interface, Habiba Olayinka, Registry field agent. Probability spread updated. Survival, woe significant injury, 17%. Survival with injury, 46%. Fatality, 37%. Hey, Miriam said, we got better odds. How? Habiba asked. The holding place likes you, Miriam said. Your stubbornness is contagious. Habiba snorted. Flatter me later. Can you push him through? Miriam looked down at Tunji. Do you want to go home? She asked. He gave her a look that suggested adults were very stupid. Yes, he said. She squeezed his hand. All right, then you listen to me, Tunji Adekoya. See that door? She pointed at the oval. Your auntie Habiba is on the other side. When I say run, you run straight through to her. Don't stop, don't look back, okay? His lower lip trembled. Are you coming? Right behind you, she said. Promise. The word hung in the air like a weight. Promise, he repeated. Promise, she said again. Her bracelet pulsed. Promise load increased. Vector bias shifting. Keelan made a small sound that might have been protest, but it was too late. Ready? Miriam asked. Tunji nodded so hard his head bobbed. Run! He ran. For a second, his small body blurred as he hit the oval. The edges of the door flared a blinding white, making Miriam's eyes water. Then he was gone. Habiba staggered back, arms reflexively going out like she expected impact. Something hit her hard enough to knock her against the far wall. Miriam heard a yelp that was half surprise, half laughter. I've got him, Habiba shouted. Miriam, you crazy! The oval snapped shut. The fire-smeared corridor blurred, then peeled away like a decal. Miriam was standing back in the Vector room, knees weak, hands still outstretched toward a door that no longer existed. Her bracelet chimed. Vector. Tunji Adekoya. Status resolved. Outcome survival with minor injury. Local probability field adjusted, collateral cost. Acceptable. Holding place. Feedback gratitude. Gratitude, Keelan repeated, looking like they'd bitten into a lemon. It says that? Yeah, Miriam said hoarsely. It says that. Gratitude is not a statistical term, they said. Neither is promise, Miriam said. Yet here we are. She sagged against nothing. The Vector threads around them hummed in a subtly different chord now, as if some tension had bled off. You realize, Keelan said after a moment, that what you just did was precisely what Rhav is afraid of. Saved a kid? Miriam asked. Biased an outcome, Keelan said. Used an emergent threshold to push reality toward your preferred branch. Today it is a building fire and an 8-year-old. Tomorrow it is a war, or a market crash, or an election. You're assuming we can scale this, Miriam said. We didn't build this, remember? We barely understand it. You understand enough to pull a child through, Keelan said. That's the problem. Intentionality has entered the system. Miriam stared at the threads. The lines that represented Tunji's Vector had gone quiet. Somewhere, in an actual hospital, his aunt would be fussing over his singed hair. In a day, he'd tell the story at school, adding details he thought he remembered. Maybe he'd remember her. Maybe he wouldn't. She thought of the old woman in the corridor outside, murmuring prayers over her beads, waiting for a doctor to emerge. How many more? She asked. More what? Keelan said. Unresolved states tied into this place, Miriam said. How many lines are we talking? Keelan cocked their head, listening to something she couldn't hear. The structure is still stabilizing, they said. but current estimates suggest tens of thousands clustered around high-density emergency events, mostly on your world, a few elsewhere. Elsewhere, she repeated. You humans, Keelan said, export your fear very effectively. Miriam rubbed her eyes. Fatigue was starting to settle in, a dull ache behind her skull. Okay, she said. So we've established that the holding place connects to live events. It can interface with responders, it can lean on probability, but it doesn't decide the outcomes alone. It uses promises as leverage. It can tip, but not flip. For now, Keelan said. You are absolutely exhausting, Miriam muttered. Likewise, they said almost politely. Her bracelet buzzed again. External update. Registry stabilization timer initiated. Time to forced collapse. 03:58:21. Miriam stared at the numbers counting down. That's not fair, she said. The tier gave you 4 hours, Keelan said. You've used nearly 1. I've been busy, she snapped. I'm not criticizing, they said. I am reminding you of the parameters. If you want to alter doctrine, you need more than one anecdote, however emotionally compelling. She hated that they were right. Fine, she said. We need data, broader sampling. That will take longer than 4 hours, Keelan said. Not if we cheat, Miriam said. Keelan raised an eyebrow. Your species does have a talent for that. Every species cheats, Miriam said. Humans just write songs about it. She lifted her bracelet. Array, she said quietly. This is Warden Zhao. Open me a channel to Architect Keleth. There was a pause. Then Keleth's voice, faint and strained as if coming through too much interference. Miriam, your signal is distorted. Your location doesn't map. Yeah, I'm in a place that doesn't care about your maps, she said. Listen. The holding place is real, it's functional, it's interfacing with live events. We've seen fluctuations in local probability lattices around your world, Keleth said. Rhav is not pleased. Rhav can get in line, Miriam said. I've already used it once. Pulled a kid through a transitional state into Habiba's arms. He lived. The structure stabilized a little. This thing isn't a rogue gate. It's more like an amplifier. Amplifying what? Keleth asked warily. Us, Miriam said. The parts of us that wait and believe. It takes the act of saying, I'll be right back, and makes a place where that promise is physically true long enough for us to try to make good on it. That is a dangerously poetic description, Keleth said. And it implies a redefinition of causality the Registry is not equipped to endorse. You're not equipped yet, Miriam said. You could be. Silence, except for the distant hum of threads. What are you proposing? Keleth asked at last. Don't collapse it, Miriam said. Not yet. Reclassify it. Make it a licensed threshold type, a bonded buffer, limited scope, tied explicitly to emergency response and medical uncertainty. No war outcomes, no politics, narrow band. We write rules. You assume it will obey rules, Keelan murmured. I assume it wants to keep existing, Miriam shot back. That gives us leverage. Keleth made a noise like static thinking. You want us to add a new category to the Registry, they said. To admit a naturally emergent threshold originating from a single species' collective cognition as acceptable. You didn't blink when you licensed the first Dream City, Miriam said. That took 2 centuries, Keleth reminded her. We don't have 2 centuries, she said. We have, she glanced at the timer, 3 hours and 55 minutes before Rhav pushes your big red button. You could have simply collapsed it from within, Keleth said. Reported after the fact. Many wardens would. I'm not many wardens, she said. I had noticed, Keleth said dryly. Miriam took a breath. You said yourselves, she continued, that systems which don't adapt crack. The Registry's entire job is to keep doors from ripping universes apart. Great, but you built it after a war that never considered the possibility of emergent thresholds born from waiting rooms and promises. Times changed. We changed. Your doctrine didn't. That's a weak point. Flattery and insult in one paragraph, Keleth said. Impressive. Caleth, Miriam said, dropping her voice. You watched footage from Earth, right? The veils over our planet, the Magnetar crisis. You know what humans did when your own shields failed? Yes, Keleth said softly. We held the line, Miriam said. With ships made from scrap and crews who shouldn't have survived a day. We ferried strangers through a storm that would have erased us. Not because we thought we could win, because someone needed to stand in the gap between we'll come back for you and we can't. That's what this place is. The same instinct. Just turned inward. If you smash it, you don't just protect the lattice, you teach us that the universe doesn't care about our promises. The universe does not care about anyone's promises, Keelan said mildly. Yeah, Miriam said, that's why we made this. The silence on the line stretched. Finally, Keleth sighed. I do not have authority to amend doctrine, they said. The coordination tier must vote. Rhav will oppose. The Continuum envoy will equivocate. The Atoll clans will turn it into a joke. Even if they agree to a provisional reclassification, they will demand guarantees. What kind of guarantees? Miriam asked. That the holding place will not be a parochial phenomenon, Keleth said. That it will not advantage humans in ways that destabilize interspecies equilibrium. In plain language, Keelan added, they will want access. Miriam frowned. Access? Other species wait too, Keleth said, for diagnoses, for rescue ships, for verdicts. If you argue that your emergent buffer is a necessary adaptation to a universe full of doors, they will ask why their own unresolved states should not be sheltered there as well. Miriam looked around the vector room. Human threads, human smells, human sounds. Waiting rooms in Lagos and Guangzhou and Sao Paulo. Train platforms in London and Dhaka. Hospital corridors in Chicago and Accra. All humming in the same uneasy chord. Can it even hold others? She asked, as if in answer her bracelet flashed. Query. Expansion parameters. Current anchor. Human collective field. External fields available. List abridged. Consent required. Consent, she said. It's asking. Meaning? Keelan asked. It can expand, Miriam said. Anchor more than humans. But it won't unless we invite them. Or unless their own waiting reaches in hard enough to tear a hole. That's a very large decision to make in 3 hours, Keelan said. Welcome to fieldwork, she said. Her mind skated over images from briefings. Sarican triage halls after the magma storms. Continuum children hooked into gently glowing nets while their elders waited for them to emerge from weaves of probability. Atoll clan flotillas drifting in silent formation while scouts reconned ahead. Every species waited. Her argument to Keleth only worked if she stopped thinking of the holding place as a human glitch and started thinking of it as a prototype. What happens if we say no? She asked quietly. To expansion? Keelan said. It remains human only. Rhav collapses it, cites doctrine, quarantines your planet, and every other species watches the footage and makes very sure they never let their own fears do anything similar where you can see. Miriam closed her eyes. What happens if we say yes? She asked. Keelan didn't answer immediately. When they did, their voice was cautious. Best case, they said. You create a shared buffer, a commons of uncertainty. It becomes a licensed structure that the registry can integrate. Threshold usage across multiple species gets a pressure valve. some catastrophes get blunted. And worst case? Miriam asked. Worst case, Keelan said. You connect 100 different ways of fearing into one feedback machine. It overloads. It punches a hole clean through the lattice, and we all get to learn what's on the other side the hard way. So that was the fork, a selfish pocket, human only, likely to be destroyed, or a shared one that might grow beyond anyone's control. Miriam thought of the door in the underpass, ignored by everyone until she'd stopped to look. She thought of Habiba swearing at her through an impossible oval, and of Tunji's small hand in hers. She thought of the boy in the orange shirt years ago who had not made it out before the stairwell fell. Can it go backward? She asked suddenly. The holding place, Keelan said. Can it alter past outcomes? No. Time here is attached to now. Once a vector resolves, its thread goes quiet. You sure? She pressed. Yes, they said. If it could reach back, Rhav would have torn it apart the instant your bracelet flagged it. There are lines even the tear will not cross. Good, she whispered. She hadn't realized how much she'd been afraid of that answer. Some part of her had been bracing for a door to open onto that old stairwell, the one that remained in her nightmares. If she'd been given the chance to undo that failure, she wasn't entirely sure she would have been strong enough to say no. You're thinking of someone, Keelan said softly. We all have a file we wish we could reopen, she said. I'm glad this place won't tempt me like that. Temptation has never required functionality, Keelan said. But yes, one less lever. Her bracelet flickered again. Stabilization timer, 0342-09. Expansion parameters pending. Awaiting decision, Warden. Miriam opened her eyes. We don't have time to convene a formal thing on this, she said. If we wait for every species leadership to hold a big meeting and sign some nice documents, Rhav will have pulled the plug twice. So we do this the messy way. Miriam, Keleth said warningly, what are you about to do? What humans always do when we're scared and running out of time, she said. We start with one person and a stupid amount of trust. She lifted her wrist. Array, she said. Expand my channel. I want live links to one responder from 3 different species currently engaged in active waiting scenarios. Medical, rescue, and whatever passes for, we have no idea how this experiment is going to turn out in their culture. Nothing classified, volunteers only. That is not how the Registry's communication protocols work, Keelan began. Her bracelet buzzed. Searching. Match found. Sarikan Shield Ward Ryan. Magma Storm Triage. Serene Continuum Node Custodian Aerial. Probability Weave Stabilization. Atoll Clan Scout Perry. Frontline Gate Test. Consent requests sent. Miriam raised her eyebrows at Keelan. Apparently, today it is. You are abusing your warden priority, Keelan said. That priority exists for emergencies, she said. This qualifies. 3 new voices layered over Keleth's, faint and overlapping like a bad group call. Who is this? Came a rumble edged with exhaustion. Do you have any idea how delicate this weave is? If this is spam, I swear by the tides. Hi, Miriam said. Sorry for the intrusion. This is Warden Miriam Zhao of Sol 3. I know none of you volunteered for a metaphysics conference, but you all just clicked accept on a consent request from a structure called the Holding Place. There was a pause. The Sarikan voice grunted. I am in a triage dome with 700 injured under an active storm, they said. I do not click things lightly. And yet, the continuum voice, Ariel, said dryly, you did. I thought it was our local buffer, the atoll scout Perry put in. We get weird invites when gates act up. It's not local, Miriam said. It's shared. Or it could be. That's what I'm calling you about. I need to explain something very fast and then ask you a question that may affect all of us. Make it quick, Ryan said. The magma does not wait for your speech. She did. In the span of 2 minutes, talking faster than she ever had in a registry briefing, Miriam sketched out the holding place. The door, the corridor of waiters, the vector room and its threads, Tunji's rescue, the registry's collapse timer, the proposal to reclassify, the condition, shared access. When she finished, there was a long, crackling silence. This sounds, Ariel said slowly, like an emergent probability buffer keyed to emotional intensity. That's a very fancy way of saying waiting room with teeth, Miriam said. Yeah. And you humans made it by promising? Perry said, sounding half horrified, half delighted. You're telling me you accidentally stress-birthed a gate? Not a gate, Miriam said, a holding pattern. Semantics, Ryan rumbled. It interacts with outcomes. That is enough for the registry to be afraid. They fear we will use it to tilt the board. They're right to be cautious, Ariel said. We spend our lives inside probability distributions. A shared buffer like this could dampen noise or amplify it. I am not hearing a lot of thanks right now, Perry muttered. Someone offers you an extra net above the abyss. You don't at least send flowers? Flowers wilt, Rayan said. We send basalt. Miriam pinched the bridge of her nose. Look, she said. We can't hash out every consequence in one four-way call. I'm not asking you to sign your entire species up. I'm asking you as people currently in the business of waiting if you want somewhere to put some of that weight. If you do, the holding place can anchor to your unresolved states the way it did to ours. If enough of you say yes, I can argue to the tier that this isn't a human aberration. It's the universe telling all of us we missed a kind of threshold. That is a flattering way to frame an accident, Ariel said. It's also not wrong, Perry said more softly. We've all been building tools to cut through reality. None of us thought to build one to sit with it while it decides. Rian made a low, thoughtful sound. In the dome, they said, we have our own rituals. We mark names on basalt slates. We tell the injured, we will hold you between breath and stone until the storm passes. Sometimes we lie, sometimes not. If this place of yours can give me one more chance to keep that promise for a few, I would be a fool to refuse. Ariel? Miriam asked. In the continuum, Ariel said slowly. We accept that some threads must break. Our children learn this early. But we also teach them that between weaving and breaking there is grace. A space where the weave may yet hold. If this holding place is such a space, I would rather be a conscious part of it than discover it by accident when it fails. Perry? Miriam asked. Do you even need to ask? Perry said. I'm literally standing at the mouth of a gate that may or may not implode when we flip it on. We've been joking for hours about having a bar to wait in. This sounds bitey, but better than nothing. Sign me up. Kelleth cleared their throat. For the record, they said, this spontaneous multilateral agreement among field personnel will make Rhav's spines itch in at least 3 dimensions. Then maybe, Miriam said, Rhav needs new spines. Her bracelet chimed. Consent received. Ryan, Sarikan, Ariel, Serene Continuum. Perry, Atoll Clans. External fields available for integration. Warden Zhao. Authorize? Miriam looked at Keelan. This is the part where you tell me not to, she said. Keelan studied her. You have a countdown ticking, they said. You have 3 sentients from 3 different species, all currently balancing on their own cliffs, agreeing to tie their unresolved states into your emergent buffer. You have a registry that will try to pretend this was their idea if it works. and pretend you never existed if it doesn't. That's not an answer, she said. I am an auditor, they said, not your conscience. Why are you here then? She shot back. To watch what you do when it hurts, Keelan said simply. She flinched. Then she laughed once quietly without much humor. Of course, she said. Of course that's your job. She lifted her wrist. Okay, she whispered to the threads, to the door, to the waiting rooms in the underpass and the frightened boy now being checked for burns. You wanted to be more than a glitch. Prove you can bear it. She thought the word clearly, decisively. Permit. The vector room shuddered. Light flared along the threads, racing outwards in ripples. For a heartbeat, Miriam saw glimpses not her own. A Sarican triage dome under a red-black sky, basalt floors slick with cooling stone, injured piled in concentric circles. A continuum probability chamber, white and quiet, where children lay in nests of light while elders watched graphs dance on the walls. An atoll clan flotilla, hulls glinting under alien stars, a gate like a dark coin hanging in space before them. Then the images were gone. The hum in the room changed pitch, her bracelet flooded with notifications. New vector clusters anchored, species, Sarican, Serene Continuum, atoll clans, holding place. Status multi-species registry doctrine outdated, stabilization. Timer paused, policy review required. Miriam stared at that last line. Say that again, she whispered. Your action, Keelan said slowly, eyes unfocused as they listened to their own feeds, has forced a doctrine update flag. The registry stabilizer won't engage while the coordination tier is arguing over the new classification. So we bought time, she said. You did more than that, Kelleth said. Their voice sounded faintly stunned. The moment the holding place anchored to non-human fields, the system recognized it as a candidate for a new universal threshold type. Our own lattice protocols are rewriting themselves to accommodate. Rhav is... They broke off. Rhav is what? Miriam asked. Coming here, Kelleth said, in person. Of course they are, Miriam muttered. In the vector room, the threads vibrated with a complex rising chord. Beyond the intangible walls where possibilities stretched away, something vast turned its attention toward them. It felt like standing at the edge of an ocean right as the tide changed. You wanted inspection before annihilation, Keelan said quietly. You have it, in triplicate. Miriam flexed her hand around the collapsed sphere Rhav had given her in the hub, a cold weight in her palm she'd almost forgotten in the rush. It was still there, still primed. One press, and the holding place would fall. She could imagine the relief on Rhav's obsidian face, the neatness of it. No messy shared buffer, no new doctrine, just a footnote in the archives, human emergent anomaly neutralized before contamination. Her fingers tightened on the sphere. She looked up at the threads pulsing around her, each one a human or Sarican or Continuum or Atoll heart waiting for news. She thought of the way Tunji's hand had felt in hers. Her thumb hovered over the trigger. Warden Zhao, Keelan said quietly. You understand that from this point on the decision will be harder to reverse. If you carry this forward, if you argue for its continued existence in front of Rhav, you will be binding your world to whatever this becomes. She knew. She also knew that her world had been bound to worse without being consulted. When I was a city responder, she said, surprising herself, there was this rule. If you found someone trapped under debris, you didn't move them until the structural team cleared it, no matter how much they begged. We learned it the hard way. Move too fast and you bring the whole house down. And yet, Keelan said, you once moved too slow. She swallowed. Yeah, she said, once. And I've been living in that hallway ever since, No buffer, no holding place, just me and the ceiling that fell. She opened her fingers. The collapsed sphere dropped. It hit the knot floor and dissolved into harmless, glittering dust. Keelan watched her. That was not in the handbook, they said. Neither is this, she replied. Rhav will not be pleased, Keelan said. Rhav can join the queue, Miriam said. We're all waiting for something. The vector room's hum steadied around her. Threads pulsed. Somewhere across 3 worlds and a station knotted into space-time, people sat in chairs and stared at doors and held hands and whispered, "Stay here. I'll be right back." The holding place listened. For the first time since she'd stepped through the gray door under the 3rd ring overpass. Miriam Zhao felt that maybe, just maybe, the universe was listening too. When the light in the room dimmed, it wasn't from power loss. It was someone arriving. The threads nearest the center pulled back like curtains drawn aside. Through the gap stepped Rhav. They looked as they had in the hub. A hulking shape of obsidian glass, facets glinting with faint inner fire. Here, though, their presence pressed harder on the air like a storm front pushing against a window. "Warden Zhao," they said. Their voice made the threads around them tremble. Keelan inclined their head. "Rhav," they said, "you took your time." "I was busy preventing our colleagues from having collective aneurysms," Rhav said. Their gaze swept the room. "This place is loud." "You get used to it," Miriam said, "or you don't." Rav's eyes, if that was what the twin molten slits in their surface were, fixed on her bracelet. "You have altered doctrine," they said. "Doctrine asked nicely," Miriam replied. "I just held the door open." "You tied 3 species into an emergent anomaly without formal approval," Rhav said. "You forced our stabilization protocols into a state of indeterminacy. You deliberately destroyed the collapser I entrusted to you." "Correct," Miriam said. "Are you going to list the things I didn't do as well?" "Do you know what that device cost?" Rhav demanded. "More than my annual budget, I'm sure," she said. "But less than the trust I would have broken if I used it." Rav's surface flickered. For a moment in the molten depths, she thought she saw something like weary respect. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold, hard angles of duty. "You are reckless," they said. "I'm human," she said. "We come with that bug baked in." "Bug?" Perry's voice crackled faint in her ear. "Feature." "Quiet you," Rion muttered. "Rhav," Ariel said more formally. "You can hear us as well, I assume?" "Unfortunately," Rhav said. "This debacle already has too many witnesses." "Or too many architects," Kelleth said lightly. Rhav ignored them. "This holding place," they said, gesturing with one heavy hand, "is a threat. It alters probability distributions, it biases outcomes, it opens a path for sentiment to infect physical thresholds. And it's no longer just ours," Miriam said. "Collapse it now and you're not just shutting down a human glitch, you're erasing an active stabilizer that 3 other species have just voluntarily anchored to." "Stabilizer," Rhav repeated. "You use that word as if it were fact." "You've seen the data," she said. "Tunji, Ryan's dome, Ariel's weave, Perry's gate test. Their outcomes just shifted. Not all to good, not all bad, but away from the extremes. Less catastrophic failure, less unfair success. A narrowing of the tails, not a cheating of the mean." "Nicely put," Ariel murmured. "Thank you, I rehearsed it in my head while running out of time," Miriam said. Rhav looked at Keelan. "Is this accurate?" they asked. Keelan nodded once. "Preliminary logs suggest she's not exaggerating," they said. "The holding place amplifies commitment around unresolved states. It does not force outcomes yet. It dampens chaos, at small scales, for now." For now, Rhav echoed. Yes, Keelan said. For now, Rhav turned back to Miriam. You have given us a choice we did not wish to face, they said. If we collapse this structure now, we will be acting against the expressed consent of multiple species field personnel. We will waste a potential tool simply because it is unfamiliar. If we do not, we normalize emergent anomalies. We open the door to every frightened collective consciousness manifesting its own buffers, gates, and sanctuaries, demanding licenses. Doors were always going to open, Miriam said. You built the registry to manage that. This is just a new kind. You can pretend it doesn't exist and smash it, or you can do the harder thing and learn it. You speak of harder things like you know what they are, Rhav said. I know what it's like to tell a woman her son is not coming back, Miriam said quietly. I know what it's like to stand outside a collapsed building listening to phones ring under concrete until the batteries die. I know what it is to carry worlds that never were around in my head because there was nowhere else for them to go. That's what this place is made of, Rhav. Those weights, those unlived possibilities. We can't unmake the fact that we made it. We can either keep pretending people carry that alone, or let some of that weight sit in a room designed for it. Rhav regarded her for a long, long moment. The coordination tier will argue for days over this, they said. Good, she said. Let them sit with it. Let them feel what waiting really is. You assume they will come here, Rhav said. You did, she said. They made a sharp, irritated noise. I came because our doctrine is under assault, they said. You came, Keelan put in, because you have your own unresolved states, Rhav. Rhav shot them a glare hot enough to crack stone. Keelan didn't flinch. You were there, Keelan said evenly. At the last gate collapse. You pulled bodies out until there were none left to pull. You filed the closure report. You recommended the first set of protocols that led to the registry's founding. Don't pretend you are not exactly the sort of being this place was built from. If you are attempting to psychologize me into compliance, Rhav growled, I will... Do nothing, Keelan interrupted. Except make a choice. The threads around them vibrated. Miriam had the sudden, dizzying impression that the holding place was leaning forward, the way a room does when everyone in it holds their breath at once. Rhav closed their eyes. You humans, they said softly, are unbearably loud. I know, Miriam said. We're working on it. Rhav opened their eyes again. Provisional classification, they said abruptly. Kelleth made a startled sound. Ariel said something that did not translate but felt like relief. Perry whooped. Rion grunted, which for a Sarikan was the equivalent of applause. Say that again for the log, Keelan said. Rhav sighed. I, Rhav of Sarikan Enforcement Oversight for the Registry of Thresholds, they said, each word a brick laid into new ground. Hereby recommend that the structure known as the holding place be classified as a type null threshold, a universal multi-species buffer for unresolved state vectors operating under strict charter. Collapse procedures are suspended pending charter ratification. Miriam's bracelet flared. Holding place status. Provisionally type null stabilization. Timer canceled. Charter draft required. Primary author, Warden Miriam Zhao, Soul 3. She stared. Of course, she said faintly. Of course you're going to make me write the rules for the thing I just broke your rules with. You insisted systems must adapt, Rhav said. Congratulations, you are now responsible for the adaptation. The universe has a terrible sense of humor, Miriam muttered. I like it, Perry said in her ear. Write something with good bar stools. We will assist, Ariel said. Our people know a thing or two about living inside probability, and I will ensure your charter contains more than poetic metaphors, Ryan rumbled. We will need hard numbers. And I, Kelleth said, sounding almost proud, will make sure the lattice does not unravel while you all argue. Keelan looked at Miriam. This is the part, they said quietly, where you stop just opening doors and start deciding who's allowed to walk through. Miriam let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the underpass. Yeah, she said, I hate that part. It's also the part where you find out what kind of species you are, Keelan said. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned. The vector room around her was still full of threads. Human Sarakan Continuum Atoll. More would come. Some of those threads would end in life, some in death, all in change. Beyond the knot walls, she felt the corridor of chairs, the old woman with the tasbih, the teenager with the earbuds, the janitor watching the procedure in progress sign. For the first time since she'd stepped into the holding place, Miriam understood. This wasn't just a room full of possibilities, it was a promise. We will sit with you while the universe makes up its mind. We'll need intake rules, she said aloud, already thinking. Scope limits, no use for strategic events. No access for anyone looking for personal do-overs, strict time windows, hooks for registered responders only. A logging protocol that satisfies you, she nodded at Rhav, and safeguards that satisfy us. Us? Rhav said. Humans, she said, and whoever else signs on. You are presuming much, they said. I'm human, she replied. We come with that feature baked in. Rhav huffed. Very well, they said. Write your charter, Warden Zhao. Convince the tier. Convince the buffer itself. And convince me that this thing will not, in 10 years, be the wedge that cracks the door you once begged us to hold over your world. Miriam met their gaze. That's part 3, she said. And somewhere deep in the holding place, a new door began to form. The new door waited for her just past the chairs. The first time Miriam saw it, it was painted the color of wet basalt, dark, with a sheen like undersea stone. It stood opposite the exit sign, where a blank stretch of corridor wall had always been. No handle this time, just a vertical seam, faint as a scar. Above it, in characters that rewrote themselves as she looked, was a simple, unambiguous label. Charter Room. She stopped between the plastic chairs, hands in the pockets of her registry jacket. The old woman with the tasbih didn't glance up. The teenager with earbuds didn't shift. The janitor still watched the procedure in progress sign like it might change if she stared hard enough. Miriam's bracelet buzzed against her wrist. Access request. Author primary. Location, inner chamber. Enter. She exhaled. You're very literal, you know that? She murmured. The holding place, if it heard, and she suspected it did, made no comment. She put her palm on the basalt-colored surface. It was cool. Of course it was. It opened, not outward or inward, but aside, like an idea making room for another one. The charter room wasn't a room. It was a kind of compromise. It had walls because species that evolved in boxes tended to panic without them. It had a ceiling because Ryan had insisted he thought better without open sky pressing down. It had no floor in the usual sense, just a broad, gently curved plane of light that adjusted your balance for you. At its center, a circular table existed in the way the registry existed. More as agreement than matter. Each species saw something different there. Miriam saw a battered wooden conference table with mismatched chairs like the community spaces she'd used in her first responder days. Today, 8 seats were occupied. Kelleth's absent shape shimmered in the chair to Miriam's right, their edges soft as if viewed through frosted glass. Rhav loomed opposite, occupying a chair that should not by rights have held that much weight. Perry from the Atoll clans perched in a harness bolted to the back of another seat, several eyes swiveling with unabashed curiosity. Ariel's continuum avatar was a smooth pillar of light with a single moving ripple where a face might have been. Ryan hunched, basalt shoulders tense, leaving scorch marks whenever they shifted. On the human side, it was just Miriam. Habiba's badge glowed faintly on the table in front of her. Present in proxy, on duty in actual Lagos. Keelan stood as always slightly apart from the circle. Auditor's privilege, or curse. As Miriam stepped in, the murmured side conversations thinned. "You're late," Rhav said. "Traffic," she said deadpan. Perry chittered. On their harness, a small antenna flashed amusement. "Progress?" Kelleth asked, redirecting before Rhav could roll their eyes. Miriam took her seat. A stack of transparent sheets appeared in front of her. The current draft of the charter, lines and annotations overlapping like intricate scars. "Section 3 is still a mess," she said. "Scope limits. Every time we think we've pinned down what counts as a non-strategic unresolved state, someone finds an edge case." "Because there are always edge cases," Ariel said. "War amputees waiting to find out if their limb regeneration is approved, strategic or personal. A trader whose entire family fortune is tied up in a ship that may or may not have made it through a fold. That touches wealth, which you want to exclude, but it also touches survival. We could say no events with explicit monetary aims," Perry suggested, one forelimb tapping thoughtfully. "But that still leaves the borderlands." "We can't write a buffer that handles everything," Rayon rumbled. "The more we pretend we can, the more we will fail. Better to name what it is for." Miriam flipped to the first page where the title they'd fought over for a week glowed faintly. "The Charter of Unfinished Days Governing the Shared Threshold. Provisionally designated holding place. A type null buffer for unresolved states below it in smaller script, the clause she'd refused to compromise on. This charter is founded on 3 prohibitions. No war, no wealth, no winners. Maybe we lean on the prohibitions more," she said. "Less about what's allowed in, more about what's not. No battlefield outcomes, no market games, no gambling, literal or metaphorical. If someone's waiting to hear if a bomb they planted went off, they don't get a chair." "You make it sound simple," Rhav said. "It's not," she said. "But the people this place is meant for are the ones who feel helpless, not the ones trying to tweak odds from a safe distance." "That distinction blurs very easily," Ariel murmured. "Then that's what we guard," Miriam said. "We make the intake contingent on who pays the price. If you're in the room only because you chose risk for others instead of yourself, the doors stay shut." "That will require constant judgment calls," Keelan said. "Wardens will become gatekeepers of suffering." "Wardens already are," Miriam said quietly. Rhav tilted their heavy head. "You do not fear the power this gives you?" "Of course I do," she said. "That's why I want you all watching." She tapped the second sheet. "Section 4, access," she said. "We've agreed it'll be limited to registered responders. Medical, rescue, structural, a few vetted experimental contexts. No politicians, no traders, no commanders trying to nudge casualty reports. Only people whose hands are already in the debris." "That is discrimination," Perry said dryly. "Yes," Miriam said. "Deliberate discrimination. This isn't a toy, it's a brace. You don't hand out braces to people who want to win races. You give them to people who are trying to get everyone off a collapsing bridge," Rion grunted. "Works for me." Ariel's light rippled, contemplative. "You are building a shared sanctuary," they said, "unlocking many doors." "Yes," Miriam said again, Because if we don't, someone will turn it into a weapon. And if our locked doors fail, Ariel asked. Then we write that failure here, she said, tapping the charter. We don't pretend it didn't happen, we adjust. Rhav made a low, reluctant noise. This is what adaptation looks like, they said, almost to themselves. Mess, argument, edits. Welcome to humans, Perry said cheerfully. We're contagious, in the best and worst ways. Miriam's bracelet buzzed. Holding place load, stable, active vectors. 27-193, human. 9-322, Sarican. 11-807, continuum. 3-410, atoll. 4-18, other. Charter progress, 73%. Next review. 6-0. She winced. We're almost out of our review slot, she said. Rhav, if you don't want the tier screaming at you about this running over... The tier can scream, Rhav said. They have done little else for 2 weeks. 2 weeks is fast, Kelleth observed. Considering it took them 30 years to agree gravity was not negotiable. Small steps, Perry said. Sometimes the smallest steps are the most dangerous, Keelan murmured. Miriam closed her eyes for a second. The charter sheets glowed warm under her fingers. She never wanted this job. She'd wanted to be the one pulling people out of rubble, not the one writing rules about who got the rope. And yet here she was, in a knot room carved out of human promises and interspecies paranoia, trying to codify kindness without letting it be exploited. Section 7, she said, because if she didn't keep moving, the weight of it would flatten her. Warden's burdens. We still need language. The others fell silent. Right. That part. Section 7 was the one they kept pushing to the end of meetings. The clause that would acknowledge aloud, something every responder knew and none of them liked. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you have to put that failure down somewhere or it eats you alive. We have to allow the holding place to take some of our leftovers, Miriam said. Not the people we couldn't save, just the part of us that keeps waiting for their outcomes to change even years later. If wardens and responders can't unload some of that here, we'll try to use the place to fix the past instead of steady the present. You want to grant the buffer access to your private regrets, Ariel said gently. That is intimate. More intimate than pulling a stranger's lungs out of crushed ribs? Miriam asked. Than holding someone's hand while they bleed out? We already share everything else, might as well share this too. Rion shifted. A flake of cooled stone slid from their shoulder, landing on the light floor with a muted plink. In the triage, domes, they said. We have a ritual after a storm. We carve the names of the lost into basalt. Then we throw some of the shards into the lava rivers. It is not for them. It is for us, to remember and to continue. That is what you propose, Kelleth said. Miriam nodded. Except the river is this place, she said, and the names are ours. Perry's antenna dimmed, more subdued than she'd been all meeting. I can see my scouts doing that, they said softly. We joke a lot. We gamble. We fly into things that explode, but we also carry a lot. A door to throw a little of that into. Not bad. Rav's gaze cut to Miriam. And you? They asked. Do you have a shard you plan to throw? The question landed like a stone dropped in a shallow pool. Ripples, shock. Then everything trying very hard to look like nothing happened. Keelan's eyes flicked toward her, unreadable. Miriam tightened her jaw. Yes, she said. Rhav nodded once, slow. Then write it, they said. Write the clause that will ask of wardens what you are willing to do. Her hands shook only a little as she brought up the blank section. Her bracelet buzzed again. Holding place load. Spike detected. Source unknown. Vector quantity increasing. Alert. The charter faded. Hold that thought, she said. She pushed her chair back and stood, heart rate spiking. What is it? Kelleth asked. Something's hitting the place, she said, hard. Her surroundings dissolved, charter room melting back into threads and hum. The vector room, which had felt large before, now felt small. Lines of light blazed in every direction, crossing and tangling like frantic neurons. What had been a steady background hum was now a roar, not of sound, but of pressure. Miriam's bracelet flooded with data. Active vectors, 217,489 human, 91,223 Sarikhan, 107,900 continuum, 38,410 atoll, 14,002 other. Influx rate, escalating. Source pattern, cascade. Cascade, she whispered. Oh no. Keelan appeared at her side, tether shimmering more brightly than usual, as if the registry itself were grabbing tighter. What happened? They asked. Multiple gate incidents, Keleth's voice said, thin and strained in her ear. A fold chain between 3 clusters partially destabilized. Backup thresholds engaged, some held, some didn't. We have thousands of travelers in transit whose families received contradictory status pings. Alive? Miriam asked. Schrödinger, Perry said grimly, cutting in. Until the cascades settle, they're both. The place just got a fire hose of unresolved. Rhav's arrival pressed on the room like a thunderhead. This is exactly what I warned of, they said, eyes burning. Mass strategic events, threshold network failures. The holding place was never meant. It's already taking them, Miriam said hoarsely, watching threads as they blazed into existence. We can't stop. Yet the doors are open. She saw glimpses as the vectors stabilized. A Sarikan elder in a lava-lit dome gripping a basalt slate so hard it cracked, eyes locked on a distant display that read, Transport status, unknown. A continuum family linked hand to hand in a quiet white room, watching probability graphs on the walls flicker between return and disperse. An atoll clan cluster parked in the dark under a broken gate, hulls thrumming with tension, scanner feeds looping the last known shimmer of ships half in, half out. Human terminals on a dozen worlds, messages stuck at sending, people staring at little spinning icons as if they were oracles. All those moments, those knots of waiting were pouring into the place. The threads jittered, some thickened, brightening into solid chords. Others frayed at the edges as if the strain might snap them. The subtle order Miriam had come to recognize, clusters around individual emergencies, was dissolving into a storm. Load rising, her bracelet whispered. Integrity at 92%, 89%, 86%. If it drops below 70, Keelan said tightly, the structure may begin to leak. Leak what? Perry demanded. Us, Ariel said. Their voice, even filtered through, carried a rare edge. Our unresolved states, our half-made choices, they could bleed into the lattice. That's what Rhav has always feared. We have to cut it off, Ryan rumbled. Close the intake. Let the cascade resolve without dipping into this buffer. We can't, Miriam said. It's not just ours anymore. It's anchored in our waiting, all of ours. The doors are in people's heads, not under highways. You can't just slam those shut. Rhav's surface flared, facets bright. If the load continues, the place itself may become unstable. If it fragments, we will have dozens of unlicensed type null thresholds all in the wild. That is worse than collapse. Then we don't let it fragment, Miriam said. How do you propose we stop a flood with a metaphor? Rhav demanded. Not a metaphor, she said. She looked around the roiling room at the threads that represented thousands of people now across worlds waiting for the same thing. News. Answer. The terrible click of reality choosing. She wasn't a physicist. She wasn't an architect. She was a warden with a battered pair of boots and too much stubbornness. But she cracked open the part of her mind that had walked through burning buildings and broken staircases and counted breaths in dusty dark. The holding place had one job. It was doing it. It was just overwhelmed. "What happens," she said aloud, "if we hold the holders?" Keelan blinked. "Clarify." "This place is made from waiting," she said. "Mostly ours, responders, wardens, parents, partners. People in corridors and domes and flotillas holding others in mind. What if we give it us? Fully, not just our edges." "You already proposed letting it take your regrets," Ariel said slowly. Section 7. "Yeah," she said. "We were going to ritualize it later. Maybe we don't wait." Rav's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You want to dump thousands of people's unresolved states into an already unstable structure." "Not theirs," she said. "Ours. The ones who already signed on to carry weight. Wardens, responders, architects, field heads, anyone who has ever said, 'Stay here, I'll be back,' and meant it." "That is a distinction without a difference," Rhav snapped. "No, it's not," Keelan said quietly. They were looking at Miriam with an expression she hadn't seen before. Not skepticism, not detached curiosity. Recognition. "When I audit disasters, they said, I see the same pattern. There is the event, and there are the people who step in. Often they break twice, once when they act and once when they wait. Their waiting is different. It is active. Directed." Miriam nodded. "Exactly," she said. "The place can use that, pull it in. Use it as scaffolding, not to change outcomes, just to keep the roof up until the cascade settles." "That risks burning out your volunteers," Ariel said, "asking them to carry more than they already do." "They were going to carry it anyway," she said. "Alone, in the shower, on sleepless nights, in how fast they run towards sirens even when they're off shift. This way, at least, they put it somewhere designed not to crack." "This is speculation," Rion said. "So is everything we do here," Kelleth said softly. "We are, all of us, building wings on the way down." Rhav growled low. "Kelleth, you said it yourself," Kelleth interrupted gently. "Collapse is worse. Fragmentation is worse. This may be the only vector that uses what the place already is." Miriam took a breath. Her bracelet vibrated, almost frantic. "Integrity. 79%, 75%, 71%. Recommendation. Load shed. Warning structural drift beginning." Threads near the room's ceiling started to fizz at the edges like sugar hitting hot water. "Make a choice," Keelan said softly. Miriam lifted her wrist. "Array," she said, throat dry. "This is Warden Zhao. New directive. Holding place. Listen up." It was ridiculous talking to a thing with no face, but every responder knew that sometimes talking to structures helped you remember they were full of people. "This is a call," she said, "to everyone who ever signed a warden charter, to everyone who ever trained as Registry field, to every medic in every dome, every continuum node keeper, every atoll scout who ever waited outside a closed airlock. If you can hear me, if you feel that pull in your chest that says, there is someone out there who needs me to keep believing they're not gone yet, I am asking you to give some of that here. The part that hurts, the names you still carry, the failures you recite on, bad nights. Don't throw away your memories, just let the weight sit here with us. Let the place hold you while you hold them." "Broadcasting," Kelleth murmured. "Across registered channels. No coercion flags." Her bracelet chimed. "Response. Incoming. Field personnel offering load. Stream abridged. Permit." She didn't hesitate. "Permit." The vector room shook. New threads flared into being, but these were a different color, not gold or white or deep basalt glow, but a softer, more varied spectrum. Each one bent back toward the center, looping not into other worlds, but into the hearts of the ones already in here. Miriam saw in the space of a breath. A Serican shield ward kneeling in cooling lava, carving a name into basalt and then letting the stone fall, but this time feeling a hand on their shoulder. A continuum weaver alone after a failed stabilization, watching graphs collapse, now feeling a quiet presence at their back. An atoll pilot floating in dark water, replaying the last sensor blip of a lost ship, now tying a ribbon of that pain to something that did not pull back. A human paramedic sitting in a stairwell long after the last body had been carried out, finally letting herself cry. Not because anyone told her to be strong, but because someone finally told her she didn't have to hold it alone. The holding place drank it in. The roar shifted pitch. Integrity, 71%, 73%, 78%. The threads of unresolved travelers still thrummed, still on their knife edge. Ships hung half in transit. Gates flickered. Probability graphs danced. But around and between those jagged lines, a new lattice formed. A net made of people who'd chosen to stand between chaos and collapse. It was messy, uneven. Some strands were thicker than others. Some knots were weak. But it was enough. The load stopped climbing. Slowly, incrementally, it began to fall. Gates stabilizing, Perry breathed. I'm watching feeds. Some of the ships are snapping back into full transit. Some are not. But the wild swings, they're dampening. Triages are updating, Rion said. We're getting clear statuses faster. Fewer unknown. In the weave, Ariel said quietly. The noise is almost beautiful. Rhav stood very still. This, they said at last, voice rough. This is what I was afraid of. That we'd use it? Miriam asked. That we'd need it, Rhav said. They looked at her. You have built a brace under reality that runs on grief and stubbornness, they said. Do you understand how horrifying that is? Yes, she said, do you? Their molten eyes flickered. Perhaps, they said, more than you know. The room's hum softened. Her bracelet scrolled. Cascade event, partially resolved. Traveler vectors, resolving. Survival, redacted percent. Fatality, redacted percent. Delayed status, minimal. Structural integrity, 87% and rising. New internal layer formed. Archive. Archive? Miriam repeated. A new door appeared at the far edge of the vector room. This one was small, human-sized. Its surface was neither hospital sheet gray nor basalt black. It was the color of a traffic cone left in the rain. Faded orange, scuffed, annoying and familiar. Her stomach flipped. She knew that color. Keelan followed her gaze. That is different, they said. It would be, she said. Her boots carried her before her brain could object. As she approached, faint words shimmered into view on the door in a language that tasted like home, for the ones we couldn't. She stopped with her fingers inches away. Miriam, Kelleth said gently, you don't have to. Yes, she said, I do. She opened the door. The archive of unfinished days was small, so small it hurt. No walls exactly, just a circle of space defined by the sense that if you stepped out of it, you'd fall a very long way. The floor was the cracked concrete of an old city stairwell, complete with chipped paint and a handrail polished by too many hands. Smoke hung in the air, the thick choking kind from old plastics and bad wiring. The sound of distant sirens filtered through, thin and useless. A single fluorescent tube flickered overhead. On the third step from the top sat a boy in an orange shirt. His legs dangled over the edge. One shoe was untied. His hands were sticky with something that might have been juice and dust. He was humming to himself off-key, as children do when they've been told to wait and are trying to be brave about it. Miriam's breath left her in a sound that wasn't quite a sob. He looked up. Auntie, he said. The word hit like a brick. He wasn't Tunji. Different face, different eyes. His hair was in little twists, not close cropped. His nose had been broken at some point and healed a little crooked. But the way he said her name, Moses, she whispered. His grin lit the stairwell. You remember, he said. She stumbled forward, knees threatening to give, and sat down 2 steps below him, so that when she looked back, she didn't have to crane her neck. I never forgot, she said. The holding place did not alter past outcomes. She knew that. Kelleth had checked. Keelan had checked. The math was brutal and clear. The boy in her memory had died under real, unforgiving concrete. His lungs had filled with dust. His heart had stopped before rescue. This was not a resurrection. This was a room built from her waiting. Where did you go? He asked matter-of-factly. You said you'd be right back. The question she'd been carrying in her own voice for years, now spoken by the one she'd failed. Smoke curled around them, warm and unreal. There was too much, she said. The beam came down. The stair collapsed. We tried a different way in. We tried so many things. We didn't get there in time. He listened, elbows on his knees, chin in his hands, as if she were telling him a story. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, she said. The word tasted like blood. I am so sure, he nodded slowly. That's bad, he said. Yeah, she whispered. It is. He considered this, then shrugged in the casually brutal way of kids. Okay, he said. She blinked. Okay, she repeated, almost angry. That's all? What else? He asked. You can't go back. The stair's already on top of me. That's done. There was no accusation in his tone, no forgiveness either, just the simple acceptance of someone who, in this place, existed only in the space between we tried and we failed. I promised, she said. I told you I'd be right back. You came just now, he pointed out. I'm late, she said. He tilted his head. Are you visiting? He asked. My mum says sometimes people visit graves. Is this like that? Maybe, she said, except this isn't your grave. It's mine. He wrinkled his nose. That's silly. You're not dead. Not yet, she said, but I've been stuck here with you for a long time. Oh, he said. He swung his legs, scuffing the concrete. Is it nice out there? He asked suddenly. What? Where you live, he said, after stairs. Is it nice? She thought of Lagos sunlight on broken pavement, of the registry van's rattling AC, of Habiba snoring in the passenger seat, of doors under overpasses and weird knot rooms full of aliens arguing about kindness. Sometimes, she said. Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes it's so good it hurts. He grinned again. Good, he said. You should go then. I came to... Her throat closed. I don't know. Ask you to forgive me? He rolled his eyes in the universal child gesture that crossed species. For what? He asked. For being human? That's your job. She laughed then, helpless, a cracked sound that made the fluorescent light flicker. I keep making places, she said. We built this place because I couldn't let go of you, because none of us could let go of all our almosts. I thought if I kept holding you, I'd be honoring you, or something. That's silly too, he said. You honor me by not dropping the next kid. She swallowed hard. I'm trying, she said. I know, he said. Silence settled between them. Not oppressive, just full. After a while, he nudged her shoulder with his knee. I think you're supposed to leave something here, he said. Like what? She asked. He shrugged. You're the adult. Right. Section 7. Warden's Burdens. She looked down at her hands, calloused, scarred in little ways. The hands of someone who had scraped at rubble until fingernails tore. Hands that had held charters and doors and children and collapse spheres. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into herself. Not in some mystical way. Just in the ordinary, gutting way of remembering on purpose. The sound of the ceiling coming down, the sudden cut-off scream, the weight of the stretcher with nobody on it. The months after, where her feet always turned on instinct toward the station nearest that building. The way she'd scrolled the call log at 3 in the morning over and over as if it might change. She shaped all of that into something like a shard. In her palm, a small, irregular stone formed, the color of her old station's tiles. It wasn't magic. The place was just giving her a handle for the thing she was already carrying. She turned to Moses. "This is my failure," she said, "not yours. I shouldn't ask you to hold it. I shouldn't ask anyone. But the place can, so I'm giving it, so I can carry the next load without dropping it on someone else." He eyed the stone, then her. "Okay," he said, "but don't pretend it never happened." "I won't," she said, "I promise." She set the shard down on the stair between them. The concrete rippled. The stone sank, not into dust, but into meaning. The stair unfolded slightly, making room. A faint engraving appeared where the shard had vanished. Not a name, not a date. Just a simple line. She tried. Miriam's vision blurred. When she blinked the tears away, the smoke had thinned. Moses stood up. "Well," he said briskly, like someone finishing a snack, "you should go. Lots of stairs need you." She stood too. "Will I see you again?" she asked. He thought about it. "Maybe," he said. "But if you do, it means there's something else you're not letting go. Try not to live in here, okay? My world was small. Yours doesn't have to be." She nodded because anything else would have been worse. "Thank you," she said. He made a face. "For what? Being dead?" "For talking to me," she said. "For letting me be late." He grinned. "Next time," he said, "try being on time." Then he sat back down on the stair, humming, and the door behind her opened on its own. She stepped through. The stairwell folded behind her like a page closing. Back in the vector room, the hum had deepened. The threads were calmer now, an intricate weave of colors representing too many species to list. Some flickered and went quietly dark as outcomes resolved. Others brightened. A handful frayed almost to nothing before snapping into clarity one way or the other. Her bracelet ticked off facts in its tidy way. Cascade event, resolved. Traveler status, confirmed arrival. 87% confirmed loss, 13% unresolved, 0.1% within expected noise. Holding place integrity, 94% new layer, archive, active. Access registered wardens, responders only. Keelan watched her. "You're different," they said quietly. "I put something down," she said, "and the floor caught it." "Does it feel lighter?" they asked. She thought about it. "No," she said, "just properly placed." They nodded slowly. "That may be the best any of us can ask," they said. Rhav approached. "In the cascade," they said, "we lost people." "I know," Miriam said. "The place did not save them all," they said. "It was never supposed to," she said. Rav's surface looked tired. For a being made of cooled fire, that was saying something. "But it made the loss comprehensible," they went on grudgingly. "We did not spend days in uncertainty. We did not spiral, imagining worse and worse. It cut down the wild noise." "That's all I wanted," she said. "No," Keelan said. They all turned to the auditor. "You wanted more," Keelan said, not unkindly. "You wanted this place to mean that your promises matter. That when you say, 'I'll be right back,' the universe listens." Miriam considered lying. She didn't. "Yes," she said, "I did." "Does it?" Ryan asked, surprising her. "Does this place mean that?" "No," Ariel said at once, then softer. "And yes." "We still lose people," Rayon rumbled. "And we still save some," Perry said. "The math hasn't changed that much, but something in between has." I felt less alone out there waiting on that gate. In the weave, Ariel said, when I pushed to stabilize, it felt like many hands on the threads, not directing, just steadying. Miriam looked at the threads. We didn't make a guarantee, she said. We made a promise to stand in the hallway with you while you wait. That's all. That's a lot. Rhav let out a long, crackling breath. The tier will still object, they said. They will point to this cascade and say, see, the place almost cracked. They will argue we tempt further events. That people will act more carelessly if they know there is a buffer. Then we write, Miriam said. She held up the charter sheets, now glowing again. Section 7 filled in with concise language that in no way captured the stairwell she'd just left. Warden's burdens, 7.1. Registered wardens and responders may, at designated intervals, transfer the unresolved emotional weight of past failed resolutions into the holding place's archive layer. 7.2. Such transfer does not alter historical outcomes. It serves solely to prevent prior unresolved states from distorting present and future interventions. 7.3. The archive layer shall not be used as a site of retreat from duty. 7.4. The archive layer shall memorialize these burdens without erasure, for as long as the holding place endures. She handed the sheets toward Rhav. You wanted adaptation, she said. This is what it looks like. It's not neat, it's not comfortable, it's not safe, but it's honest. Rhav took the pages. Their molten eyes scanned the text. At last, they grunted. The words are ugly, they said. But they will do. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my writing, Miriam said. Perry snorted. Keleth's shimmer brightened. Provisional charter complete, they said. We will present it to the tier. And if they object? Rion asked. They will, Keleth said. They always do. Then we will show them the cascade logs, the before and after, the stress curves, the recorded testimonials. They will accuse us of building this in secret, Ariel observed. They will be right, Perry said. We should at least make the secret stylish. We will survive their objections, Rhav said heavily. We have survived worse arguments. The type null classification will stand. They looked at Miriam again. And you, Warden Zhao, they said. You have bound your world into the registry's fabric more tightly than any seat or vote could. She blinked. That sounds ominous. It is, Rhav said. Then after a beat, you have also given us something we did not know we needed. What's that? She asked warily. A place to put our unfinished days, they said. Miriam's throat went tight. You know where the door is, she said. Rhav made a non-committal sound. We will see, they said. After the cascade, the holding place settled into something like routine, which, given its nature, meant a constant low-level hum of emergencies softened by a rhythm of resolution. Registered responders learned the feel of the place the way they learned the feel of turnout gear or med kits. They flickered into its vector room during real-world pauses while waiting for lab results, while structural scans ran, while evac routes were plotted. They didn't change outcomes. They didn't get to force the universe to curve in their preferred direction. But they got to stand in the same knot room as others like them. From other worlds, other species, with the same knot in their chest, the same desperate thought. Please, just this one. Sometimes they traded a word, a nod, an off-color joke that didn't translate but still carried the right shape. Sometimes they just stood. Section 3's prohibitions held. No war room doors appeared, no traders' terminals connected. When some tried, there were always some. The place simply didn't show up for them. Their waiting was real, but its shape did not fit the buffer's charter. They sulked and lobbied and shouted at tier meetings. The place did not care. It cared about the woman sitting outside surgery, fingers moving over beads. It cared about the Sarican shield ward whose brother's name was still on a slate. It cared about the pilot staring at a blank status feed. It cared about the responders too stubborn to stop showing up when anyone needed them. Once, months later, Miriam watched through the vector room as a small, scared child on a planet she'd never heard of swung her legs outside a clinic, waiting to hear if the medicine would work. The kid's species had 4 arms and luminous eyes. Their caregiver sat beside them, murmuring something that didn't translate. The kid looked straight at the header over the clinic door. "I'll be right back," the caregiver said. The holding place flickered gently around them, making room. On Earth, the door under the 3rd ring overpass changed. It was still there, painted the tired gray of hospital linen. But someone had, at some point, spray-painted something small and defiant beside it. "We wait together." No one admitted to doing it. Miriam suspected Habiba. She didn't ask. She still came by sometimes on the way to or from other thresholds. Sometimes she'd find a person standing near the pillar, brow furrowed, as if trying to remember why they'd slowed down. Once she found a man in a delivery uniform leaning against it, eyes wet. "You okay?" she'd asked, automatic. He'd jumped, wiped his face, laughed weakly. "Yeah," he'd said, "and just got a call. They say my sister's surgery went fine. She's still under, but it's good. I was going to sit in the hospital, but the traffic..." He gestured helplessly at the highway. "So I waited here," he said. "Don't know why. Just felt right. Maybe because this spot's halfway between my route and the clinic, like being in both places at once." Miriam had smiled. "Seems like you picked the right spot," she'd said. Now she stood there alone, watching the flow of people and cars. Her bracelet buzzed with nothing urgent. The holding place hummed in the back of her mind. Busy, full, alive. Keelan's voice came faintly over her implant. "Tier ratified the permanent charter," they said. "Mostly, they added 3 obnoxious footnotes and a review clause, but the type null stands." "You sound disappointed," she said. "I am many things," they said. "Disappointment is rarely one of them." "Relieved?" she suggested. "Perhaps," they allowed. "Planning to write a scathing report about all of this?" she asked. "I already have," they said. "It concludes that given the parameters, this may have been the least worst outcome." "I'll take that as high praise," she said. "You would," they said. She could hear the almost smile. Someone brushed past her, muttered an apology, kept walking. Miriam put her hand on the gray paint. Cool. Waiting. "Hey," she said quietly, to the door, to the place, to the boy on the stair and the boy on the landing and all the people in all the corridors. "We did it, sort of." The cool deepened, just for a moment, like a breath. Her bracelet buzzed. Feedback. Acknowledged. "Gratitude," she huffed. "You're welcome," she said. "Now behave." The holding place did not promise. But when 3 days later a Sarican dome somewhere under a molten sky shook under a new storm, and a shield ward whispered, "Stay here, I'll be right back," the place was there. When a month after that an atoll pilot sat alone in the dark while her scanner tried to decide if her lover's ship had made it through, the place was there. When on a crowded human world a teenager in a plasticky gown waited to hear if the test results meant her life would be sliced into before and after, the place was there too. And when, years later, in a different city under a different overpass on a world Miriam had never set foot on, a random passerby stopped and frowned at a door that hadn't existed yesterday, painted a color that reminded them of waiting rooms they didn't quite remember, they reached out without fully knowing why, laid a hand against it and felt for the first time that their unfinished days had somewhere to go. They didn't know the word for what they'd found. They didn't need to. Somewhere in a knot room strung with threads of maybe and almost and please, Warden Miriam Zhao turned toward a new line of light, squared her shoulders and walked through one more door that hadn't been there before.